This is my journey.
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 This is my journey with jazz. Yeah! All right, little kitties. I need for you to listen very, very carefully. I'm going to talk to you about the beginnings of this wonderful music we call jazz. You see, we have always had music. But during the slavery time, black folks basically had two kinds of music. One that they brought over with them from Africa called work songs. That's right, it was an African tradition. And the other, they was put on them when they got here. It was called spirituals. Now, immediately after the Civil War, we got a little Emancipation Proclamation. That music came to be known as the blues. It was a rural country music. We talking about the blues, baby. Talking about everything that's wrong with the world and how I'm gonna deal with it. Out west, they had some folks creating some piano music called ragtime. You say ragtime. Ragtime and the blues. They both made it to New Orleans and they hooked up and had a good time. And in a few months, they had a little baby. And that is why New Orleans is called the birthplace of jazz. Oh yeah! Now most of this jazzing took place in a place called Storyville. We'll talk about that with a little bit more detail later. But some of the most outstanding musicians of this period were people like W.C. Handy. He wasn't really from New Orleans, but he was in this period. But man, you had to start with Buddy Bolden, great trumpet player, probably created this thing. Yeah, let's talk about him. Let's talk about Joe Arva. He was called King. Let's talk about a man who said he discovered jazz, Mr. Jerry Roll Morton. Oh yeah, let's talk about that slide trombone player who created the language for us trombone players named Kid Ory. And then let's talk about the most famous one from New Orleans from this period, and that is my man, Mr. Louis Armstrong. Now, when this blues and ragtime got to New Orleans and hooked up over there in Storyville, there was already a tradition of spicy music and spicy food in New Orleans that came all the way from the tradition of Congo Square. You say Congo Square. Yeah, people got the groove going in Congo Square, and when the blues met ragtime in New Orleans, it all became one big gumbo. One big gumbo. Say gumbo. One big gumbo that came from blues, ragtime, and the African tradition that had been preserved in New Orleans, Louisiana. Thank you very much.
Well, one that really stands out to me is a trombonist with 3 letters in his first name, 3 letters in his last name. I think you know who I'm talking about. His name is Kid Ory.
That's right.
Now, Kid Ory, something I like about his playing is that he really displayed how the trombone could be played and used in a jazz band.
Louis Armstrong, for me, is the cat. Not only because he was a wonderful trumpet player, but he was a vocalist as well. And he created the style that vocalists use, just about every vocalist in some way after him. When he sang and when he played, it was the same thing. It was exactly the same. There's recordings of him singing with other vocalists, and he'll do like some background things. You can just imagine him playing that because it was the same thing. So Louis Armstrong is it for me.
Yeah, I would have to say Sidney Bechet. Is that the saxophone really wasn't all that prominent in early New Orleans jazz. And Sidney was one of the originators of bringing the saxophone to the music. Originally, a lot of players would play clarinet. That voice was occupied by the clarinet. And Sidney kind of opened the door and paved the way for a lot of other great sax musicians that you know, like Lester Young, and even other instrumentalists like Fats Domino that broke off and got into boogie woogie and some of the rock and roll elements. So he was definitely one of the pioneers and somebody I look to from that era of jazz music.
I love early jazz because the drummers are magnificent. There are 3 that really stand out to me: Warren Baby Dodds, Zooty Singleton, and Dave Tuff. I think my favorite is probably Warren Baby Dodds. He played in a group called the Red Hot Peppers, not to be confused with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but the Red Hot Peppers. And he also played with Louis Armstrong and the Hot Seven. Zudi Singleton played with Louis Armstrong as well in the Hot Five. And Zudi is a cool name. It's actually Creole for cute.
My favorite players from the early New Orleans era are Jelly Roll Morton and Earl Fatha Hines.
Well, initially, like I said, it was taking up the clarinet role, but eventually they began to expand the role. It became more and more popular. Some of the tenor players and alto players of the day became more prominent as their voice began to blend with the trumpet and the cornets of the day. Yeah, it became a lead instrument, very, very vocal in its timbre, and it increasingly became more popular as the years went on.
Well, the trombone for early New Orleans style jazz really helped the music slide home, if you wanted to put a phrase to it. It helped the music grow, it helped the melodic harmony, as well as the additions to what the trombone could bring to swing and early jazz at this time.
My instrument, the trumpet, was the melody. And you think about all music, the melody is the main part of the song that you recognize as, that's what the song is. So the trumpet was the melody line, the main melody line in all of the music from that period.
The drums actually came from marching bands. You've seen a lot of drummers. It takes multiple people to play a cymbal, a bass drum, a snare drum, and one person put those all together. And much like Warren Baby Dodds, they just kind of leaned it up against a chair or holding a cymbal and kicking them. And they figured out a way to play, one person to play all of these drums. And then from there, they were able to create different stands to put cymbals on and different holders to put toms on, and then figure out a way to tune the drum. And not only were they just playing what's called time, just playing a rhythm, but they were actually beginning to interact with the other musicians playing a melody or playing chords on the piano. And so the drums went from just playing background to playing time to actually being an integral part of playing the melody.
So the piano was used in New Orleans music in very different ways. On one hand, you had the soloist, the big pianist who had lots of practice, and he could play classical music and was trained, and they played ragtime. And ragtime music was hard music because your left hand was creating this big accompaniment with a bass note and chord, bass note, chord, chord, bass note, and then you have these complicated melodies in the right hand, and one had to figure out how to do these two things at the same time and make it flow and make it feel good. Then there was ensemble playing. When you were playing in an ensemble with other people, you can't be playing all these notes, so you had to find a way to accompany, to play with the rest of the group, mostly playing quarter notes or the patterns, the beats of that the drummers played in this time to play with the rhythm section. I think one of the rhythms is called the Big Four, and so pianists usually played to play in a way that was enhancing the groove rather than showing all their chops and how good they were. So they had to give up some of that soloing to make the group sound better. But then came Earl Hines. And what Earl Hines said, I really love the trumpet. I love how he solos. I want to play the piano the way Louis Armstrong plays the trumpet. So he started taking Louis' improvisational language, meaning his solos, the way he was expressing himself on the trumpet, his riffs, the way he was riffing. He was copying those riffs and playing them on the piano as a soloist. No one had ever done that before. And so that's called the trumpet style of playing of Earl Hines. And now we all associate jazz with taking solos, but nobody had done it on the piano until Earl Hines.
My journey with jazz, yeah, baby.